Hey, welcome to Integrative Preparedness. I'm Steve Smith. Hope you all are having a good day. I want to read something here and talk for just a minute about it. Something that was sent by one of our patrons, I believe, or it might have been on YouTube. I forget which. Actually, it's from I wrote it down. It's from Woodman49. I'll get to that in just a second. I just put up over on Patreon one talking about total resistance. We are at the point where we need to be thinking about total full spectrum resistance on all levels. I know that there are probably people. Let me adjust this. Am I too short there? I don't know. That's right. I know there will be people right now that will say, read Total Resistance by Von Dock. Yes, I have. Thank you. Read it a long time ago. Actually, I don't know where my copy is. It's in a box somewhere. But I did mention that in the one that I just put out over on Patreon. It's a good book, very good book. It's certainly not the only book. There are many groups out there that from which you can learn a lot about resistance and the kind of resistance that we're going into now. And I talk about that over on the Patreon video. Anybody who's not on Patreon, I always put the links down here. I'd love to have you. Feel free to join us over there because it really is a community of some deep thinkers, and you'll get a lot, and you'll probably have a lot that you can contribute to, and I hope you do. This was sent to me, like I say, by Woodman49. I tried to find out who said it, and really, there's no. I don't find any source materials. I Googled it, and it took me to a couple of gun channels, and basically everybody on there was asking who did it and who said this, and all the responses were simply a copy of what had been said. Somebody said, did I already say this? Somebody said attributed it to George Washington, but I don't find any sources for that. Anyway, whoever said it, and if anybody can come up with an original source on this, please tell me. But I'd love to give credit for it. And it's about the most terrifying force of death. Now, one of my favorite sayings has always been, beware the wrath of a patient man. Who said that? Was it John Dryden? I think it might have been, but I wouldn't swear to it. It's always been one of my favorites because I consider myself a patient man, and I have to keep myself in check a lot because I've learned the danger of letting it go too soon and improperly. And I always say, as I say, that the uncontrolled force or uncontrolled violence is as dangerous to the one who wields it as it is to those against whom it's wielded. I said that. That's original there, but I think I put that in a paper I wrote one time. But beware of the wrath of a patient man. I have seen that over and over and over throughout my life. You know, the world is full of the chest beaters and the thumpers and whether it's bars or whether it's on the street or whatever. I'm never worried about the guy who's mouthy. Never worried about the guy who's going off acting, tough and trying to show everybody how tough he is. He's not the dangerous one. Oh, he can be. He can be a threat, but I tell you, the real dangerous one is somebody else, and we're going to talk about that here. So I'm just going to read this, and then we'll discuss it for just a minute. And like I say, I have no idea who said this, but it's right on the money. It says, the most terrifying force of death comes from the hands of men who wanted to be left alone. They try so very hard to mind their own business and provide for themselves and those they love. They resist every impulse to fight back. They're not the ones out there saying, we gotta do something now. They resist every impulse to fight back, knowing the forced and permanent change of life that will come from it. If you have not fought, I mean life and death fought. I don't mean fighting in a parking lot. If you have not been in that, you don't understand the permanent change that happens in your life. They know the moment they fight back, the lives as they have lived them are over. That is so true. And I wish I knew who had written this, because there is so much. There is more truth to this than those who have not gone beneath that surface can begin to understand. And they said it better than I think I ever could. The moment the men who wanted to be left alone are forced to fight back, it is a small form of suicide. They are literally killing off who they used to be. Which is why, when forced to take up violence, these men who wanted to be left alone fight with unholy vengeance against those who murdered their former lives. They fight with raw hate and a drive that cannot be fathomed by those who are merely play acting at politics and terror. True terror will arrive at the left's door, and they will cry, scream, and beg for mercy, but it will fall upon deaf ears. That is one of the most brilliant things I have ever read in my life. It goes to the bone. It goes to truths that only a few people can begin to understand, and it's those people who are among those men who wanted to be left alone. Our country was built by people who wanted to be left alone. We're going through something now to where some people are choosing one way and the rest of us simply want to be left alone. They haven't left us alone since I can remember. Now, things were a lot better when I was a kid, but they still weren't leaving people alone. How many people fall into this category of men and women? This was simply meant, it was written this way with men. I know plenty of women out there who just want to be left alone, and I would want a lot of them on my side instead of a lot of the men I know. Okay. Too many men have become weaklings, and there's a lot of women out there are strong. It's not about men or women. It's about who will stand up and who won't. I'll tell you something interesting. It's kind of what I don't talk about this in detail over on that one on Patreon about total resistance. But, Che Guevara, who was a dirtbag, anybody who thinks that Che Guevara was cool needs to study more about Che Guevara. I got into, doesn't matter. But he did bring to the revolution in Cuba, the idea of using women very importantly in the revolution against Batista. And the reason that he did that is because he was half Irish. I don't know, a lot of people don't know that. He was half Irish. Well, the Irish, historically, the Irish tribes, clear back through the Celtic tribes, the women were a very important part of their war chiefs, of their, whether it was open warfare, whether it was resistance, women were an integral part of it. And he used women very effectively in the guerrilla operations in Cuba. One of the most famous Celtic war chiefs was Boudica. It's pronounced several different ways if you're familiar with her. So anyway, that was just an aside saying, yes, women, you are included equally in this. For those of you who want to hear it one more time, I will read it one more time because I stopped it a couple of times to make observations of my own, and this way you can hear it all together and internalize it. And then I'll say one more word at the end. The most terrifying force of death comes from the hands of men who wanted to be left alone. They try so very hard to mind their own business and provide for themselves and those they love. They resist every impulse to fight back, knowing the forced and permanent change of life that will come from it. They know the moment they fight back, the lives they have lived, as they have lived them, are over. The moment the men who wanted to be left alone are forced to fight back, it is a small form of suicide. They are literally killing off who they used to be, which is why, when forced to take up violence, these men who wanted to be left alone fight with unholy vengeance against those who murdered their former lives. They fight with raw hate and a drive that cannot be fathomed by those who merely play acting at politics and terror. True terror will arrive at the left's door, and they will cry, scream, and beg for mercy, but it will fall upon deaf ears. Many of you, like I said, you can understand that. There is a chasm that you cross when you go from a normal life to a life of violence, understanding, even embracing violence. You lose a large part of yourself. I have always maintained that separate from survival itself, there is nothing on the other side that makes up for what you've lost. At least there hasn't been for me. You all, there will be some of you out there with similar experiences, enough experiences to comment on this. Most people don't have the experiences to be able to comment on this. So we can recognize who those are. But I think it's one of the worst things that can ever happen to a person. It is something that when it has to be done, it has to be done. It is a form of personal sacrifice. But there is no reclaiming the life that you had before. So, we ask, please just leave us alone. What comes, if they don't, is on them. So, I'll leave you with that thought. And you all have a good day. We're going to be talking about America tomorrow. What is it? See you later. Bye-bye.